it up for Laura Cornelia Inamedinova. She's the CEO of LKI Consulting, please. I'll let you introduce your panelists. Our next panel is very tech savvy, and it's about the convergence of AI, IoT, and blockchain.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you who are here. I'm actually going to have quite an amazing panelist here today, and we are going to talk about blockchain, AI, and IoT. So I would like to ask everyone to come on the stage first. We'll have Marcello. Marcello, please. And a round of applause for everyone. Micha, I would like to invite you on the stage. Do we have our panelist? Oh, he's here. A big round of applause. And we have, last but not least, Alan. Big round of applause. I would like to start my panel with a little bit of questions for the audience. As we're going to talk blockchain, IoT, and AI, I would like to ask everyone to raise their hands who are currently using blockchain and either IoT or AI in their businesses, in their everyday lives. Can you please raise your hands who are using these technologies? Anyone else? Not a lot of people. And then another question, who are planning or thinking of using, and that's why we're in this panel and want to learn more about how these technologies can be combined together. A little bit more hands, everyone? We have such a big audience, but everyone is so chill, I think. We need to, spice things up. So why don't we start by letting our panelists to introduce themselves. Marcello, please, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I think that everybody in this room actually uses AI. Some people maybe don't realize it, but AI is basically everywhere, right? So we have voice assistants, we have Siri, Alexa, even your vacuum cleaner now is AI driven. So as I always said, you better be nice to robots because one day robots are going to rule the world. So be nice to them. My name is Marcello and I'm the CEO of SingularityDao, which is an AI driven crypto hedge fund basically, of which I'm going to tell you more in a second.
Micha? I don't...
Hi, everyone. Excellent. Well, thank you, Laura, for having us today. My name is Micha Benoliel. I'm the founder of a network called Nodle, where we basically build what we call and we expect to be the largest wireless network on Earth. And you can participate just with your smartphone by joining, downloading our app, and you start to connect devices, and basically the systems reward you for connecting to sensors and devices. I love the theme of that panel, because I think what we are all building here together is actually an infrastructure for what I call abundance. And I think for that to happen, we need technologies like AI, blockchain, and IoT to work together in hand. And so I'm excited to talk about that topic today.
Alan?
Thanks, Laura. My name's Alan Vey. I am the CEO and co-founder of Aventus. We are a layer 2 solution built originally on top of Ethereum, going after the live entertainment industry, but extended significantly beyond that since, focusing on interoperability and a sort of enterprise-grade experience to help people get involved in the blockchain world. So very exciting to chat with these guys here today around how AI, IoT and blockchain can all come together. Obviously important to look, like we've always seen in these industries, of the right applications, not just using these technologies for the buzzwords, but definitely a lot of, well, that we've already identified where we can add great value. So, thanks.
Thank you, Alan. And as we're talking blockchain, AI, and IoT, I think the first question for everyone in the panel should be, so are these technologies brothers or distant cousins? I think we can start with Alan.
Yeah, I guess that kind of goes to my point that I was just making there, right? It's important to have a look where you apply it. In the early days, we saw probably 2017 blockchain being applied to various areas where it didn't necessarily belong. A lot of people, especially sort of publicly traded companies or people with tokens, will try and jump on buzzwords. So oftentimes you see inappropriate applications, but in specific sectors, and there's many that we've seen, just talking from the blockchain perspective, we're looking at supply chains or anywhere else, that's where the IoT comes in. And AI, I mean, if we're looking at machine learning anywhere where there's a lot of data, there's great value that can be added there, and the various other fields as well. So I'd say within the right sectors, very close brothers.
Thank you, Micha.
So I think technologies like AI are going to throw us in a world that we actually we know very little about. Since more of these automated systems are going to take decisions for ourselves, we need a layer of trust. And that's where blockchain comes into play. And then when you want to interact with the real world, then IoT comes into play. And so I think that's how these three technologies will articulate and work together. And I believe they're actually going to work together all in hands. And I'm excited by the future because it means that it's going to save so much time for humanity down the road. So I think one of the themes actually we should touch on today is actually what is the world we are going to create by having these technologies working together, and what it means. And we're going to touch probably on singularity.
And talking about singularity, Marcello, what are your thoughts about these technologies?
Yeah, I love that assist. So, well, obviously, AI and IoT, that's easy. I mean, they're basically married together. AI and blockchain, they've been flirting with each other for quite some time. They haven't yet mate, but that's what we're working on in SingularityDao. So, I come from the background of SingularityNET, which is a company that was founded by Dr. Ben Gorzo, which is a luminary in the field of artificial general intelligence, right? And Ben has been long said that AGI is the last invention that the humankind would have to make. Not because AGI will come and rule and destroy the world, but because AGI will be so powerful that we'll basically be able to do everything that we need for us and invent anything that we need. Being such an important technology, it's crucial that we keep it decentralized and we keep it in the hands of people rather than between closed door of big corporations. So in this sense, I really like what you were talking about and how AI can actually not just save time for the rest of humanity, but actually save the rest of humanity and help us progressing as a species. And the singularity, yes, absolutely, we're all waiting for it, whether it will come in a form of a super powerful neural network or a network of decentralized neural network interworking with each other. That's what we are currently debating. Obviously, our stand in SingularityNET and in the world of, the decentralized approach to AI is that if the singularity will come, it will be an interactions of different algorithms with different capabilities that are able to work with each other independently in a decentralized manner rather than a super powerful AI developed between closed door by Google, Facebook, or Amazon, for example.
Thank you, Marcello. And I have a follow-up question, I think everyone in the panel. So what are the current best cases, best applications anywhere from the market? It could be your products, it could be your competitors or your colleagues that are actually combining these technologies and having amazing results out of it. Who would like to start first? Alan?
Sure. So maybe let me take each one individually. If we look at blockchain and IoT, for example, there's a lot of very cool things being done in this space, right? If we look at there we go, sorry. If we look at supply chain provenance, we're involved in one project where we're now with Brexit, right? We've got an issue with food at the border. So if clams are caught in the North Sea, we've got to know, are they European clams or are they British clams when we're moving them across? And this requires not only knowing what the temperature of these things is, exactly where they've come from, geolocation, all of this sort of big massive data that we get from the IoT sensors. It then also requires that kind of trust layer that we were talking about. And ultimately, at the border, they've got to be able to verify everything very quickly. So those sort of applications are very interesting. If you look at even across supply chains and developing economies, we've seen some of this in Africa, right? Disintermediating interest rates, where you have better trust now that you've seen where the produce comes from. All sorts of interesting things across that space. When it comes to AI, again, this being a very general term, I like to focus primarily on the sort of machine learning front. Anywhere where there's a lot of data, right, great insight and analysis can be done towards a target function, whatever you sort of calculate as being the reward system within that. So we see this all over in blockchain, optimizing systems towards a return, whether it's in finance or more sort of consumer-driven applications. So yeah, that's just a flavor of where some of these areas touch, at least the blockchain industry.
Thank you. Micha?
Well, I think the same, and the like has Alan on this. I think I don't know actually one single application today that has really merged all these three technologies. I think when it comes to blockchain and IoT in logistics or collection of data from sensors, I mean, it's happening. We have examples with Nodle. We've done a lot of work with actually pretty large companies. But I think AI will come in, and mainly in applications, I would say, for smart cities, for example. I think that's going to be an area where actually we're going to see the first application combining blockchain, IoT, and AI together.
I would like to make a pause and ask one more follow-up question for Micha. You're on Nodle, which provides a lot of different IoT devices around the city, access to the internet, in very simplified words. And of course, you have to work with most probably local governments, authorities, to get those IoT or other, I don't know, some kind of platforms connected. So when people hear, let's say, IoT or AI, that's all good, that's all technology, we kind of comfortable with it, but then when they hear the word blockchain, it has really bad sometimes association connotation with, let's say, cryptocurrencies or other projects which kind of smear the name. So do you have any issues with, let's say, some kind of government official authorities when it comes to accepting a blockchain part of your business?
I think it's a good question, but blockchain today is becoming a mainstream technology. So yes, at the beginning we had some resistance, but as we move on, I think we're going to encounter and face less and less resistance. And because we are dealing with systems like AI, notably, or IoT devices that transmit information, which can be crucial, since you need a record, you need a way to have a trustless technology for that. And blockchain plays a perfect role for bringing that trust layer to information that has been collected that eventually will lead to an action of a system or decided tomorrow by an AI. So it's becoming necessary. I think blockchain the time is perfect, and we are just at the beginning, and yeah, every system that needs a trust layer will rely on blockchain. Okay,
thank you. Marcello?
Regarding applications, or
yes,
regarding
applications.
Whether blockchain is shady or not? Okay, no, applications, yeah. So many actually applications I can think of.
What is the one you're most excited about?
Well, mine, of course, the one that we are developing.
Yours?
But before shilling my own company, I would like to point out that there are different uses as well that can be done, can be integrated between AI and blockchain. I mean, just thinking about self-driving cars, right? So either we have self-driving cars that store data and pass it directly to Google or Tesla, or we can store them in decentralized networks, in decentralized computing resources around the globe, right? So that the owner of the data actually get rewarded by sharing their own data, right? So that's a potential application in self-driving cars. If you think about history of AI, immediately the first main use of AI is, and probably I hope Chris is going to agree with me, is our CTO. He knows AI way better than anybody else here. But it's been in the military sector. Right after the military, we use it for marketing, and then they finance the industry. And right now, what we are doing is using AI to apply to finance. So, and decentralized finance in particular. So AI in finance has been applied for over 2 decades, I would say. Nobody's actually doing it in decentralized finance. We are actually creating huge databases of data that we can scrap off the blockchain, that we're getting from centralized exchanges. So we really believe that machine learning can actually help people, users, and also institutions to make informed decisions. So you can actually use algorithms to help you navigate in the intricate world of decentralized finance, which is made by over 10,000 new cryptocurrencies, and you have NFT coming up, and you have new DeFi instruments, and then machine learning can actually be really helpful in navigating this conundrum. So this is definitely the application that I'm most excited about.
Thank you for sharing that. And when we think about, let's say, AI, on one hand, we think about exceptional technology that has so much to offer, but on the other hand, we have all those horror stories of you have to be nice to your robots because one day they might rule the world and yada yada, all these kind of jokes. So talking about AI and, for example, blockchain that offers a lot of transparency, is this maybe a sort of a solution to kind of capture the AI, not let this technology to go rogue and kind of add more transparency, trust? Because having high-tech technology, let's say used for military, it can go to the wrong hands, it can have wrong applications. So maybe in some sense these technologies can work together to create something good and minimize the risks of having sort of wrong and negative technology application. I would love someone in the panel to kind of share their thoughts about this?
Yeah, that's actually our field, right? I mean, that's what we're doing. We are building we're working on building benevolent artificial general intelligence, right? And we believe that the blockchain actually represents the perfect fabric as it encourages people's participation into the creation of this incredible technology. And I think you basically gave the answer already. So blockchain is crucial because what we want to develop is an AGI that is by the people and for the people and not by corporations for the corporations to sell you shit that you don't need, right? So we need AI that actually does good to the planet. And if we mainly uses AI for military purposes, of course, what kind of AI we're gonna have? An AI that will have as a sole goal the one to make war, right? So how do we create the benevolent?
I think it's particularly important when we are all affected by it. So if you take the example of smart cities, and we're going to see more and more cities becoming smart, we're going to see more and more projects of smart cities, then once a decision is taken, if it's taken by a system, I mean, all the citizens get affected. So especially in that case, you need a layer of transparency and trust, and blockchain works perfectly for that.
I love the saying, for people, by the people, not for governments. Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add to that. I did now, what was it, in 2016, I just completed my master's degree in artificial intelligence at Imperial, and we had some of the sort of thought leaders there. And it's always interesting, this debate around to what degree does AI pose us serious risk? Because if you look at the current state of the development, or at least based on my knowledge in 2016, if you compare it to the notion of what we think of real human learning or real human knowledge, we're so simplistic in the way AI actually works today. They're incredibly complex models, don't get me wrong, but compared to the human brain or anything near conscious, we're so far away from anything like that. So it's very important to be aware of this from early on, but I don't think it should in any way slow us down from pushing as hard as we can and as fast as we can towards that, because there's such a long way to go. So systems like blockchain and various other sort of technologies, when you do professional software development, you build multiple degrees of sort of almost redundancy, but fault tolerance, right? So these are important to include within the systems that we build, but by no means should slow us down out of fear. It's time to kind of race ahead at the moment.
Yeah, sorry, I totally agree with you, Alan. I mean, that's often the answer that I gave to people like that are worried. To do is to leverage AI tools to help people making better decisions, and whether that comes in form of price prediction signals given by the AI, or sentiment analysis, or automated portfolio rebalancing, or blockchain analysis done by the AI. We have a whole suite of roadmap in place, but I think the DAO aspect is particularly important in what we do. And yes, as you said, part of the mission is the one to bring greater liquidity to slow cap tokens, which are the ones that often are suffering, especially in bear market conditions. And we want the whole ecosystem to thrive, so we need to bring more visibility to these projects. But our goal is also to make the life easier for the everyday user to get exposure to the crypto economy by the means of artificial intelligence. So again, what benefit can AI bring in this case? We can support people in getting exposure.
Which is more gamified, is going to be released in the coming weeks, and I'm excited to see how many people are going to join the community.
Thank you. Let's talk security. So, and privacy. I assume there are a lot of questions and a lot of most probable risks and concerns with these technologies, especially tracking every move we make, either it's location or sentiment analysis or others. How can we kind of raise the whole level and energy of this industry that's focused more rather than on what's bad and what's, we're going to be hacked, our location is going to be tracked, on actually the positive aspects, like you can make money out of it, you can make better informed decisions in trading. What are the key educational sort of lessons or messages you, for example, as founders, can share?
I think education is number one, and unfortunately it takes time before people get educated to learn how, when they install an app, for example, or when they use a new system, basically, what are the information that is shared or they have to share about themselves.
We've built, right, especially on the public blockchain side, you have a degree of immutability and persistence. We have all of the data from day one of whatever, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and sure, much of it is encrypted if we're talking about credentials or whatnot that people have put on chain. Today, it is secure, but the difficulty that we see as cryptography evolves and the standards we use to secure data and keep things private, when quantum supremacy comes, sort of quantum computers, and I believe Google has already claimed this, the type of encryption that we use on blockchain today will no longer be sufficient, which means all of that data essentially becomes public. So when you have a system that is perpetually persisted with an immutable nature, things like the right to be forgotten under GDPR are almost unenforceable. And as the world evolves, we have to be very conscious of this. So it's a very challenging thing, I believe, for public blockchains today. And then you have an argument of maybe we should have private or permissioned networks. But I always make the analogy of a sort of intranet and the internet, right? If you use the right standards, the intranet is much more valuable connecting everybody else. And we want more and more sort of cross-chain interoperability and not seeing these pocket silos of value. But we have to balance that with the sort of regulations and the privacy concerns, as I was sort of saying before. So there's no real answer to this. It's a debate today, but very important considerations for the future.
And now, continuing with Alan. While I was preparing for this panel, I found something very interesting, which I would love to share here. Let me read it. Ethereum has scalability issues that makes it a victim of its own success. And this was written in Aventus LinkedIn profile. So Alan, tell me, is layer 2 a solution? And food for thought, maybe we need AI to be added to the equation?
Yes, so when we look at the base layer 1 chains, right, the most important thing that they've gone for is security, which you have to take care of first. You have to ensure that you align the incentive of the economic participants when you're dealing with the kind of market caps that we do have. The layer 2 space has come about to the sort of hygiene factors that everybody has is higher throughput, right? Because we can rely on the security of the sort of base chains, more stable, cost-effective pricing, various enterprise-grade sort of structures around that. Now, layer 2 does solve this, but we need to look a little bit beyond. Ethereum's dominance within the DeFi space is reducing, especially if you look in NFTs. Solana, Cardano are starting to try to make plays, maybe Solana a bit more. And it's about interoperability as well. So that's one thing where we try and really come in, both on the interoperability front and sort of customized business logic, because many layer 2s are very specific. So yes, it does solve the problem today. If you look across the capabilities that layer 2s have across the whole market, nobody's anywhere near their full capacity because the adoption of blockchain has just not reached the levels we anticipate. And who knows where it'll go? Maybe we'll be at the level of Visa, MasterCard, maybe significantly beyond. If we have significant IoT applications, almost certainly beyond. So we'll need to scale even beyond that. So we're starting to look at layer upon layer within blockchain. Now, the role of AI, again, I think we need to segment what in particular. If we look at user experience is something that plagues the industry, right? So if we look at the fields of natural language processing or similar, if you can just talk to something and transfer your tokens or generate your keys off of a print of your voice or biometrics, that's a very much more user experience-wise, much more effective means of interacting with blockchains. If we look at machine vision, or some of the stuff the guys before were talking about, right, about generative NFTs, you can use AI to potentially automatically identify something that's aesthetically pleasing as well as valuable. And then obviously the significantly older machine learning field, optimizing any big data set towards some kind of reward function. We already see a bunch of applications that are incredible for that. So yes, there's all sorts of applications that can significantly improve blockchain.
So talking about adaptation, of course, we all here in the audience in a panel hope and expect blockchain and other technologies to be more widely adopted. But in order to do so, we need most probably the big guys, the large organization, association, 4,500 companies to be more accepting about this technology. So my question is, could blockchain come as a package deal with IoT and AI to be kind of more widely adopted by large organizations? Marcello?
Yes, for sure. First of all, I see AI as an instrument, right? That so if we get big enterprises to adopt blockchain in a way or another because we're building better infrastructure and it creates better value for the final user, then AI it's a layer on top that can actually help them navigate the space, as I was saying before. So it's important to understand that when we talk about AI and blockchain, we're talking about an extra application and a sort of like guiding hand that we can give to the users of blockchain in many different ways. Another application that I find extremely interesting in artificial intelligence that I haven't mentioned before, and that it kind of merges together with NFT, which has little to do with, sorry about that, with enterprise adoption, is in art, in creative art. So we did an experiment a few months ago in April where we had the humanoid robot Sophia to create art. And specifically, she created a portrait of me that we sold as an NFT. And people were questioning whether artificial intelligence can actually be creative and robots can create art. And I think that's an interesting reflection that has a lot to do with the philosophy behind AI and the philosophy behind creativity and where creativity does come from in human beings. And the conclusion that I had by talking to many artists is that artificial intelligence is a tool. So in the same case, is it a tool in the hand of an artist, like a paintbrush is, right? So it's just an extra help that an artist can have in order to create art. In the same way, can AI help enterprises to adopt blockchain? Yes, absolutely. So sold as a package? Yes, why not? Because it's basically the case of what we're doing in SingularityDao, where we have artificial intelligence supporting enterprises in making educated decisions regarding their portfolios of investment. So I think the analogy actually might seem a bit stretched between art and finance, but I think I'm trying to give the explanation of why AI is an actual tool and is not an end game. But again, yes, enterprise adoption is cool, but I always prefer the community-driven approach. As I said before, we are a DAO. We're there for the community, and with the community, we're going to create tools that enterprises are going to be able to use.
I think you actually need two things. You need killer use cases, and I can mention a few in the space of IoT and blockchain, and then you need a great user experience. Enterprises are not going to jump on applications built on blockchain if you don't have easy off-ramps to access the services. So as maybe the democratization of stablecoin is going to accelerate adoption of crypto services, but that's a very important aspect for enterprise and businesses to embrace actually crypto services, decentralized application, dApps, however you want to call them, that are built on blockchain. I can give one example of, because it's actually, I was ordering an electric bike a couple of months ago, and for 72 hours I would call the vendor, and I didn't know where my bike was, and the vendor was sending me back to the rapid courier company to get the information, but the rapid courier company, the shipper, didn't know either. And for like 72 hours, I would have likely paid tens of dollars, not tens of thousands, but tens of dollars to know actually where my bike was. And that's something that, I mean, in our case at Nodle, it's a killer use case. We believe that we can bring for rapid courier a way to actually locate things and very small things at a pretty low cost almost all the time. And that's, for us, a killer app because we are talking of millions of items a day. Yeah, so I think you need to come back to your question, killer use cases and a great user experience to actually have large businesses and enterprise adopt decentralized applications.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'd say if you have a bigger toolbox, right, combining these technologies together allows us to solve a greater sort of state space of problems. You have a better chance of being able to develop something that some big company would want to adopt. It obviously comes down to how much money can we make somebody or save somebody at a tolerable sort of level of risk. But the key way, I mean, we work with Live Nation, publicly listed company in the live entertainment space, right? And it's not necessarily about adding additional technologies on. I think the key way for a combination or any of these individual technologies to be adopted is regulation, so that big companies can feel like they have security when they do adopt these. There's not going to be issues, at least in our space, with unregulated tokens or returns. And potentially just as important, if not more important, is user experience. And that requires innovation in each of the sectors to make things as simple and easy as possible while still trying to not move away from the fundamentals of what was trying to be achieved.
And I have the final question to wrap this panel up. Let's talk future. So what are your thoughts about these key technologies and the future? Will they go side by side, or will eventually we'll have some kind of new technology, merged technology, let's call it 3.0 or even 4.0? What are your thoughts on that, Marcello?
We are just entering, I think, 3.0. So I think let's leverage the full potential of Web3, which means actually there are a lot of challenges. It means better interoperability between all our system. I mean, here we all have our own layer 2 or layer 1 basically chain, and how can we work together? So that's the main challenge today, is how can we actually use and leverage, or someone else leverage our services respectively, combine them to create something which has value. And that's basically going to be the key, and I feel we are just at the beginning. So interoperability is really key.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Interoperability and AI across the board. So when we were talking before, you were mentioning education is key. I also want to stress that participation is key. So we want more and more people to participate to this new economy that we are creating. AI can only be built in a decentralized way if we have adoption of this technology. We want more and more developers to develop AI on the blockchain, so that we can really build the fabric of interoperable artificial intelligence algorithms that can give birth to the next decentralized artificial general intelligence, which is where we eventually hope to be in 10 to 15 years' time. So this is the future that I see. So a participatory environment that encourage developers to develop more decentralized artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with these guys, right? I think the beautiful innovation that we have here with blockchain that we never previously could do is represent digital scarcity. And with digital scarcity comes value. And that value allows us to align economic incentives or create economic incentives to get people to exhibit certain behaviors. So combining these technologies together, we've only just touched the beginning of the sort of incentives we can create to build a better Web3, should we say. And we're starting to see now, as you do in any industry, a sort of breaking into silos again, due to the competitive landscape of how economies work, right? So the key is interoperability, making sure we keep everything connected so that all of these ecosystems can flourish in the true sort of decentralized vision that ultimately is what our industry and many others sort of started off with.
So to sum things up, we're just in the beginning. This industry of combined and converged technologies are just starting out. So anyone in the audience, if you're still thinking or hesitating, should your next business be maybe blockchain with AI or blockchain with IoT, it's definitely the time. And I would like to ask everyone in the audience to give a big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you, everyone.